Man, opening week of Super Rugby was really entertaining for me, at least the first day. Everything after that was kind of a mixed bag, but we'll get into it. Let's go.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get it, no call it quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tusizawa, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Micah Nagaishi, and welcome back. I was kind of surprised, but not so surprised at the Super Rugby standings after this weekend. I definitely botched a lot of the scores, so we'll get into that a little bit, but also a little bit of different energies and fights than what I had expected throughout the weekend. I guess we'll just start off with the Chiefs game. You know, the Crusaders definitely looked a little different under Rob Penny. I want to say in almost like 2019, 2020, Waratahs-esque in their offensive approach. A lot of offloads, a lot of ball in hand play. Just absurdly different from what I was expecting. I was hoping that they would kind of keep more to what made them great. Obviously, they kind of went back to that in the second half, but in the first half, it was kind of strange. And I think that was where a lot of the problems had occurred for them, was just getting into that rhythm, especially with a new lineup. I also think that the biggest battle on the field really was George Bauer, Owen Franks, and Joe Moody just taking it to Samasoni Tokiaho and co. You know, I think without James Ryan, they really looked very different in the scrums, and especially just overall in the front row and second row, they just looked out of sync to the point where they could easily, you know, this is where all this all black experience, especially from Owen Franks and Joe Moody, come in, and they just wrecked house. And I think that just comes with clinical play, you know, all the experience that they have, and it'll continue to do so. And the Chiefs scrum was arguably, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, in Super Rugby. So seeing them do that kind of damage to them makes me wonder what they can do moving forward with other lesser teams. I said that one of my biggest storylines also last week was that Quinn Tupai coming back. And I think it looks solid enough. I was expecting him to score that one try from Sean Stevenson early versus going to Xavier Rowe. But, you know, such is life. I think, you know, if you really wanted to see him test out his leg, he did a damn good job at it. You know, he took it into contact on multiple occasions, took multiple guys down, ran great support lines at pace. I was really impressed with what he was able to do just because they kept going for his legs, and the man didn't stop. He didn't seem to give up a little bit of his motor, and I'm glad to say that hopefully Quinn Tupai is back to starting form, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to hold his place at the 12 jersey over Daniel Rona and friends. As for D-Mac's leg injury, I was kind of initially concerned. It doesn't seem to be too much of a concern now, though, given that I'm not sure if they gave him a cortisone shot or not, but he was celebrating with the boys at the end, standing, thankfully not on a cart. So, you know, there is hope for that. I don't anticipate him to come for week 2, but, you know, there is obviously a little bit of wiggle room if it really was that minor. So we'll see about that. Also, I would say the offense looked very lost without D-Mac and Anton Leonard-Brown when he went off for his concussion, which is a whole nother issue that we'll talk about. I would like to say, though, that Josh Iwana did make strides in areas that I had said he should in terms of game management and space management. I really was surprised at how his kicking game has really emerged, at least through the Chiefs. And I probably would give him like a 72 or 74 grade out of 100, you know. Obviously, there's still more work to do in that regard. He's not going to be a D-Mac in any regard, but as a overall 10, I probably would put him up there. As for the second half on the Satyrs side, you know, they obviously went back to right what they do best. Turnovers and support lines, you know, obviously they made that hat trick with getting the bonus point loss. I was really impressed with that. You know, despite the Chiefs just basically playing on the back foot the entire second half, they did an okay job. I just think that it wasn't enough, obviously, when it comes down to having the Chiefs just really battered. You know, you can't obviously make a lot of offensive play when you're taking in a lot of penalties and you're having a lot of these turnover issues at the breakdown. You know, I really think that second half really lit a fire under them, and they just went back to doing what they do best. As for the Chiefs, I really think that they need to be more on it in the second half without DMAC. It's almost as like the situation where, well, pre Jack Crowley with Ireland and Johnny Sexton, where they just lost without him there, and no one could really fill in that role. I'm kind of glad that Crowley has, but I think they're gonna need to find that guy, whether it's Caleb Trask, whether it's Josh Ioane, somebody else. They need to do something about that. I think that needs to be a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, you need to bring back Caleb Trask into the fold. Obviously, Caleb Trask was in those years where the Chiefs did not do good at all. But I think when you saw what he could do, he was like an Alex Smith. He wasn't going to give the game away, but if you set him up with enough windows, he was going to manage the game effectively well. And I expect nothing less out of him going back to that. So perhaps you could bring him in, maybe have more of a, obviously Josh Ioane has either won the battle or they wanted to test him out early in week 1, which is probably more of the latter than the former. So I think that battle's going to go on throughout the rest of the season, especially with DMAC possibly being a little nagged out. So, maybe give him some wiggle room in round 2 and let's see what happens. As for our second match, I would like to say that ostensibly, I know this is probably going to be a hot take. This is probably the most interesting and entertaining match I had all weekend. Rebels and Brumbies. I know the stat sheet doesn't exactly say what I was viewing, but personally, when you look at how the match went, you saw a ton of resurgent performances from the Rebs. You had a absolutely revived Brad Wilkin. The rest of the backfield, Andrew Kellaway looked back to normal. You had everyone outside that lineup. You had Jordan Uelisi, Rob Leota, all playing out to their best. Rob Leota scored 2 tries. Arguably should have scored 3, but such is life again. There was a ton of vintage performances that some of that I haven't seen since 2019. Shout out to Rob Leota. But I think really what they took on was a new attack under head coach Kevin Faulkner, was fast, flat, and physical. And that really kept them in the game for majority of the 60 minutes that they were there. Despite the fact that Corey Toole was basically just lining out touches, boom, 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 down the line, they really had the ability to set the tone against them. Outside of a couple yellow cards from Felipe Dungunu and friends, they really maintained the pace and put the Brumbies on the back foot that I really wasn't expecting throughout most of the match. Obviously, I thought that the score would be a lot closer, but, their attack, because they were so fast and flat, obviously led to a lot of turnovers, and hence why they had a lot of tries against them, especially from that Andrew Kellaway one where I really thought he should have held it on and instead of trying to pass it out wide. But I guess it'd be like that. I mean, this is something that I've seen from him over the last couple years. I really think that him and Carter Gordon really need to stop doing hero ball exercises, just because when they're rushing and being frantic, they're not good. And they tend to set the ball up for failure for their side. I think the Rebels easily left about 14 to 17 points on the table in the first half. I definitely think that they left about 21 points on the table overall. You can see where Kevin Faulkner is trying to go. He's doing a good job overall, but in the Rebel Swan Song, I expected a lot more on the table. If they had just gotten a couple of those mauls in, a couple of those non-turnovers like that 1 to Andrew Kellaway and friends, they would have been easily on the board a lot closer than what they had done. And I really think they could have got a bonus point loss out of it and emerged in at least the middle of the pack. Obviously, there's a lot more rounds to play, but I think that's something we need to look into and see if they really improve down the stretch. As for the Canes, I did kind of watch a little bit, about 70 minutes of it. I think it was not much I really expected outside of self-inflicted wounds from the Western Force. I really thought Ruben Love was really coming into his own in the 15 jersey. I would love to see him at 10, but if you're going to play him at 15, at least let the man do his job, and he did it damn well. I would say the only thing is, where is O'Donnell? We talked about him as my player to watch. I don't know where he's at. I didn't even see him come off the bench. Maybe he's injured. Maybe he just didn't make selection for this week. But cross our fingers. Let's hope to see him ball out this year. I really think he deserves a spot in the starting lineup. As for the Drua, I don't know what happened to Fiji in the last 6 months. They were riding a great season. They rode a great World Cup. I could argue they should have made a little bit into the quarterfinals, but I think that the defense really just screwed them. When you look at ostensibly what they had in the margins, they had a lot of missed tackles and a lot of ruck watching, and that's the reason why they did not cover the wide angles as much as I would have liked. They were all just compressing the breakdown and obviously not leaving the windows that should have been marked up closed out. I think with slight adjustments, they could have racked up a couple tries and change, but I guess not. I'm not sure if this is just how they play now or something's up with their offense, but perhaps chemistry needs to be abound. I did say that this was going to be one of their growing pains, of just trying to see how they do without Ravovo in that lineup, without a lot of those guys that they lost to Bristol and to France and other clubs in England. I think more of their offloads led to quick turnover for them. That's one of the big things I noticed. I think they really need to try to cut that down and maybe move more to what they used to do, which is more offloaded from the ground type of deal. They had a lot of breakdowns, though. They were so quick that there wasn't anyone there really. So I feel like they could have got one off, at least one. But I think it hurt them big time. Turnovers at the breakdown, they just weren't as disciplined. The Blues counter-wrecking was insane. I was not expecting that on any sense of the word. I really thought Fiji would have brought that physicality to the pitch that they normally do. I think the Blues obviously had cited Vern Cotter's conditioning routine as key to this match. Obviously, he was the coach for Fiji for a long time. I could really see that they were embracing that kind of play. This is something I kind of expected, but not to this degree. I really think that they turned it over with not only just having the conditioning, but also having the talent to then kind of meld them together. We saw a lot of it, especially with Angus Tava. Man, was that a beautiful try. He was doing all types of things on the pitch today. I think he's earned that spot over starting. I think that's a good reason why they let Alex Hodgman walk. I do like him, but I like Angus Tava so much more. He looks renewed off of that injury. I wasn't expecting that. And especially, shout out to my boy, Hassan Statutu. You're looking vintage in that performance, big guy. I would love to see more of that moving down the stretch. I want to see what that rookie year had, where he was arguably the MVP of Super Rugby that year. I think that was in 2019, 2020. Oh, this guy is amazing. They should have given him an all-black cap for the World Cup. Arguably, I think his presence over there could have helped, push them a little bit over the edge, over the box. But I think, obviously it's what if, but such is life. As for my Taz, I think bringing such a physical gang rushing D to the Reds and successfully keeping them from using their electric backline, I was really impressed by that. You saw a lot of Tana Edmed, Max Jorgensen, who ironically, due to injury, had to come off the bench into the starting role at 15. I think he did a great job. Dylan Page looked great. Mark Nawani Tawase looked great. And Angus Bell looked kind of pedestrian here and there. I don't know what's happened with that. Perhaps that they were just trying to shut him down, and I give him credit for that. Overall for the whole game, I really think that was another one, just like the Rebels, it was a big defensive battle that they eventually lost in the trenches. They had it for a majority of the game. They just couldn't tie in the tries together. You had beautiful miracle balls from Nawani Tawase and Dylan Page, but you're going to need more than that, obviously, down the stretch in order to get the game. I really think that Tana Edmed, just like Carter Gordon, needs to really slow down and kind of take things as they come. I thought I saw both of them going back to the Rebels game. They were both just really looking for hero ball, I think, a little bit more than what I would have liked, and really just trying to make plays happen where they shouldn't have. I really think that they could have held the ball on a little bit better and just kind of managed the space much more. I think that probably would have given them more possessions to the team. Obviously, the Taz up front, I think in the forward pack, I was not expecting that kind of downfall, at least in the lineouts. Their set pieces look horrible. But I think that they left a lot of on the table, just like the Rebels. I think it's a similar narrative. I think once they can get the offensive part and set piece back together, they'll be okay. I do think because of that the Melbourne Rebels are just above, which is slightly embarrassing given the fact that the Taz have a good group. But the Taz really do bring a lot to the table, and I do think they could still be in contention for that 2 spot, just like the Rebels again this year. Sticking with the Taz, I was surprised to find out that Darren Coleman, old coach of the Teenies, is on a hot seat and expected to be fired by week 4. I wasn't exactly really expecting this, given the fact that the Taz have really built on what they have done over the last 4 years that he's been there. It's kind of bogus if you really think about it. He has a lot of quality that really on the staff that no one else has on the league other than really the Brumbies. He has, outside of a couple players, not a lot of guys on that team. A lot of the old guard obviously has left, and it's forced the younger group to really maintain that kind of contention and ability to keep the team together in leadership that you just don't see them doing really in other teams if they were slated in that spot. I just don't see any real quality candidates unless Ronan Nagara was to maybe come back from La Rochelle. That'll be interesting if he can do that. Unless you could maybe get a couple guys from the Brumbies staff, or if the Rebels do fold, you could maybe try to get Kevin Faulkner, but that would be kind of a waste, I think, given the fact that DC is kind of a better coach, ostensibly. I think he rebuilt the Taz, obviously from being that under Rob Penny for 3 years, being consistently last, losing almost every game, to being second place in Australia every year, getting them to that quarterfinal every year. Now, obviously, they do get bounced out every year, but it's still better than anything that they've seen under Rob Penny. They consistently get out there. They push teams around. Angus Bell has seen some increased development exponentially under him. I would love to see what he could do if he wasn't, recruiting and doing all the GM activities that he's doing now, in comparison to what he may have done with the Teenies, where he was more hands-on with the team. I understand that, his check may be a little hard to swallow, but, I think he's a great coach, and he would be a stupid decision on all-time levels to throw him out to dry. He's not the cause of the problem. I really think that they need more talent on that squad. They need more of a salary cap, and it starts with that and then works its way down. So we're going to see a little bit more of that moving forward. As for some more news, I know I said I was going to talk about this last week. I understand, but I ran out of time. So here we go. We have a little bit of extra juice in this. I can maybe get some of this out. So as for the 2 biggest news items, I thought I was really psychic on both of these, and you'll see why. I think the first thing would be Joseph Manu joins Joseph Suaalii to come to Super Rugby and the Wallabies. Obviously, as I've said with Suaalii, they roll up the Brinks truck for both of them, but I think it's going to be a long gamble to see how they're worth the financial hardship and face that they're going to need to do to earn the quick cash. I can't find film on either of them outside of their debut for Suaalii for some reason on YouTube. I'm not sure what happened with that. But Suaalii just looks like a glider to me who can play 11 and 14 for a team. Kind of use him like a Mark Talea under the high ball, but I would say he's more laterally elusive than he would be else, according to just old film. But if he still remains his lanky bod and he has the hops, I'm more than happy to slot him in there. As for Manu, I think the 3 words for me would be guaranteed power finish. He brings a low body height and has offloading prowess out the wazoo. He has the ability to be that powerful gliding strider with the ability to get up and contest in the high ball. I loved seeing him on the goal line, just finishing balls off of a drop kick. He has the ability also to get more lateral movement, I think, than Suaalii. Obviously, I would need to see more of recent film, but I think he leans on that power, and he's an easily plug in the 12 or 13, especially at 13, if he works on his kicks here and there. I would love to see them both play. Obviously, on cash-strapped teams, I would love to see them both either on the Rebels or the Waratahs, for reasons. But obviously, with the Rebels folding, Waratahs, by the look of it, not having a lot of budget, I realistically could see them maybe jumping to the Force or the Reds. Given the fact that the Reds have been a little bit more selective in their centers group, I think that they're an easy upgrade over Josh Fluke and friends, outside of maybe Jordan Pataya. So here's hoping, crossing our hands, that we'll get there next year. As for my really psyche prediction, I was not surprised, but kind of surprised to hear this happen so soon. That would be the Super Rugby proposed merger with the MLR and Super Rugby Americas. I just want to tap myself on the back for that, toot my own horn a little bit. I am a little psychic. I just did not expect this to be this soon that the leaks would come out. I mean, if you look at what Super Rugby would be with Super Rugby there and in America, I think that would be the total domination of most of the Pacific Rim, if not all of it, and the Western Hemisphere. I think that'd be great to see. It'll honestly be a great brand for all involved, and I think it'll grow the game in a lot more ways than what you would think in my proposed setting for how they could work this out. They could retain the format, but obviously just split playing each league in a bubble-like format in Auckland or Chicago. Now, I do think that it should be those two cities rather than Auckland and LA, just because of the fact that for LA, while the New Zealand and Australian team probably could afford the flights, I think it's better for the MLR teams who are a little bit more cash strapped at the moment until that Silver Lake money starts pouring in to kind of get them into a central area like Chicago to really be able to play there. Same thing with Auckland. Obviously, it's cheaper to fly to Auckland than it is to fly to Australia, and Australian teams can just take a $100 flight over, vice versa. It would be perfect. You could play 6 teams, really, just so half of the pool from Super Rugby and half of the pool from Super Rugby America / the MLR, and just have that be a bubble blowout and just be and then maybe have it as a tour around close areas. I think it would bring a lot of tourism to these cities, obviously due to Chicago being the best ability of having, you could have guys in Ohio or, other states, Indiana, and just kind of bust them in. It would bring a lot of money. That Silver Lake deal would be flying change in there. It'd be an interesting time. And I think it would be a great idea to help grow the game for the American audience, because you get to see teams that you really only see on TV unless you can afford the $6,000 tickets to go anywhere else. I think it makes sense for Silver Lake to highlight both camps, given that they're involved at Super Rugby Americas. I've heard rumors that they're kind of getting into the MLR space, yet to be seen. And obviously, it's an easy plug to really just merge them. I've talked about this ad nauseum. If you look at how their format is, I think they're missing a lot of American and Canadian teams. Obviously, with the Vancouver Highlanders really coming into their own, it's the perfect spot to really plug Canada in as well. This is things that they're really missing. And, obviously Super Rugby Americas is more of a South American comp as of now. Shout out to Stags at the Glendale Raptors, though, for holding it down. But they need more American boys in that talent group. Obviously, I think that could spread the love a little bit more. The Raptors were an extreme threat in MLR. I think it'll be interesting to have them back in the fold as well. They brought a lot of butts in the seats in the years that they were here. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. I think it only betters, obviously, all countries involved. If World Rugby is helping to foot the bill for travel for the USA, they're already footing the bill for 2 teams and a couple sponsorship deals. And I hate to say it, but in a good way, it means that TRN Plus is actually getting worthwhile subscriptions based off of this. If they keep the subs at $5 to $10 a month, I think they could easily get a boatload of people signing up to watch all the Super Rugby games and just have it be a blast. Maybe give discounts for Ron Robbins. I think they could move NZR Plus onto there, have a little bit of a collab. It'll be an interesting group to see what we can really see media-wise out of that. You can get really creative. I've said it once, I'll say it again. America has the best marketing. It has arguably some of the best athletes, and it definitely has some of the biggest pots of money on the table that are not Russian oligarchs. So it'll be a great chance to showcase all of that and finally show America its quality. And perhaps maybe they'll actually grow a little bit and better themselves in a competition standpoint. And on top of that, maybe earn a couple guys chances to go to other teams down there. It would be nice to see a lot more guys like Sama Malolo get opportunities down there as well. But that's going to be it for me, guys, this week. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.